when I was working with TCS for doing a PhD and going into ICICI, this was before it became a bank. There was a derivatives research group at that time. And then I've actually been in academia, right? I've, chosen at Chicago again, actually, University of Chicago. One thing that used to, whenever I would hear other professors, and I've said multiple times, Professor Raghuram Rajan, for instance, was my advisor, Professor Luigi Zingales. Both of these had, a very, very important impact on me. None of this was planned, by the way, and then the Chief Economic Advisor thing came along. I happened to be there. So I came back recently to the US to handle this responsibility with the IMF, in 2022.
When I looked you up, I thought कि कौन बाप आ गया? मैंने IIT Kanpur to go to electrical and electronics engineering from IIT Kanpur. You must have ranked top 50 in the country in 1990, correct?
Actually, no, I was 159.
IIT All India rank is something. Then to go to IIM Calcutta and be a gold medalist है. That किया यार बहुत पहुंची हुई चीज है. Phil, to go to Chicago booth and then do your PhD in economics from there, that again is a big jump, right? So, and from there to have a career in corporate sector, then go to be economic advisor for India, that also is a big jump because we are set in our careers and we don't think outside the box. I want to understand from you, how did you make that jump? I can understand that made me respect you, and I thought कि पता नहीं आज किसी बाप से बात कर रहा हूँ तो. And I'm really happy to be talking to you.
My pleasure too. I think it's good to talk about stuff that is not necessarily economics. I think often I talk about economics, but I remain equally interested in life. All of us, each one of us who's had the privilege to attend institutions like IIT, IIM, etc., we're extremely privileged. I think that's something we all have to first thing acknowledge. You asked me about, what made me make these choices. So, I'm reminded of when I joined IIT, one of my first sessions actually with seniors, and nowadays this word is not used pejoratively, but at that time it used to be called ragging, which was nothing but actually sort of difficult questioning, and that's all it was. I remember they asked me, what do you want to do? And I said that मुझे बाकी लोगों के समान US में जाके सेटल होना नहीं है. And so then a few choice words were first hurled at me, and अपने आप को क्या समझता है kind of thing. And then I said मुझे I want to do something beyond myself. So I've always thought, for me, I think I derive a lot of meaning, a lot of satisfaction from life when I live beyond the I, me, myself. I think that's one thread actually that has guided my choices. If you Hindi में जैसे सूत्रधार बोलते हैं, वो सूत्र जो actually that has led to all these choices, it is that it gives me enormous satisfaction. On the flip side as well, when I make choices that maybe in a sort of a limited way, maybe only helping me, my family, I feel a little constricted. So that's what has governed, for instance. That's why I did not go for, unlike many of my friends, I didn't go abroad immediately. Then a professor in mathematics at IIT Kanpur was quite instrumental in guiding me. By the way, that's another thread that I think it's so many people influence us in ways that they don't even think, right? But we are, we owe a debt of gratitude to actually who in what way when, says something nice and actually and that inspires and affects our life's choices, which is another reason why actually that shloka of from the Bhagavad Gita actually that is really very, very powerful. So this professor actually of maths suggested that I should go to the. I'll mention a specific incident maybe later. Actually, it's quite kind of a hilarious incident that actually sort of put the seed. When I was working with TCS for doing a PhD, and then in IIM's, Professor Rahul Mukherjee actually was, he's a phenomenal scholar, SS Bhatnagar awardee, and but I was fortunate that he took a special interest in me, and and urged me to basically do a PhD. He sort of said it in a way that I think at that age, at slightly younger age, appeals to you. He said, sort of like, let your talent get flowered in academia. And that is something which, when somebody you look up to actually says it in that way, then, you feel quite inspired. So then I was not sure about actually whether I could or make the cut to be a good academic. And that's why I joined a research group. I was very good at teaching. For instance, I was a stats tutor in my second year, and I a few sessions, actually, I think after the first session or so, the entire classroom that used to basically only taken by profs used to be full. So that sort of
this is during your MBA, or
MBA. It's like my second year as the tutor, as statistics tutor. So that was sort of vindication that I would be able to be a very good teacher, and that's something that I enjoy as well. But what I was not sure about at that point in time is, could I basically do research? And that's why I sort of chose the soft option of going into ICICI. This was before it became a bank. There was a derivatives research group at that time, so which was actually sort of not really academic research, but research still. And I therefore was able to wet my feet and understand what research is about. I spent 2 years there and then went for my PhD. And then I've actually been in academia, right? I've, chosen at Chicago again, actually, University of Chicago. One thing that used to, whenever I would hear other professors, and I've said multiple times, Professor Raghuram Rajan, for instance, was my advisor, Professor Luigi Zingales. Both of these had, a very, very important impact on me. One of the things that would stand out in a conversation at Chicago, for instance, was that people would always talk about impact. And that was what sort of inspired, in fact, to some extent, actually, maybe this is because of an academic environment, there was kind of a look down upon, those who pursued money. So I remember these famous words, when we had just joined, Luigi Zingales, who was the head of the finance group. He said that sort of the aspiration for impact, I think, had a profound impact, on me. I think the pun is intended there. So that's why I chose to be in academia, spent some time here in the US, and then went back to India. Actually, that's something, again, as I said, day one in IIT itself, I've always, wanted to live in India, contribute to India in my small way. None of this was planned, by the way, and then the Chief Economic Advisor thing came along. I happened to be there. So I think life there's a lot of serendipity, the only thing that I can say, especially for youngsters, is to be very sincere, be authentic, and work hard. There's nothing else that is in one's hands. Working hard is basically in one's hands. And then when an opportunity comes, actually try and make the most out of it. For instance, to give an example of serendipity, being at the right place at the right time, that's something which is what oftentimes opportunity. So when opportunity presents itself, then you actually, you make the most out of it. So when I was put on the PGNI committee of the Reserve Bank of India, I was a very young, assistant professor. But, I took that opportunity, grabbed it with both hands, and actually I did a lot of research, and actually kind of academic research that Indian policy making was not exposed to. And so people, each one of those members was just wow, saying, and not a single person today can actually, they'll all say, oh yeah, we saw the kind of work. So that's the, as in some sense, when we are working, even among peers, everybody, you get one opportunity to make an impression. And actually, I've always believed in, giving my best. And I think if people remember by saying, oh, this guy was wow, then you get other opportunities. And so I got put into the Uday Kotak committee and so on. So that's how I think that's the part which is in our hands.
So you were in Bhilai in your schooling because your dad was there. He was working, and
no, he wasn't working with a steel plant. I actually used to live in Durg. Durg and Bhilai are very close by, so about 7 kilometers, 6-7 kilometers only. So Durg, my father was in the Indian Railways and he was in Durg.
Okay, and you studied there in Bhilai, in Durg, and then you got into IIT, despite, like you're saying, you heard that someone can do it, but you decided I can do it. So tell us a bit about, maybe 2 minutes, about how did you do it? How did you get into IIT?
So one more an anecdote that I want to share, which is, so there was this sir, who used to teach us mathematics. His name was Chandwani. So I go to him for learning maths for the IIT JEE. He asks me my school, and then he asks my the percentage, class 10th percentage as well. He says, "जाओ तुम्हारे जैसे लोगों का सब नहीं होता," and he used to be, very sort of. He would say it the way he saw it, right? So, no sugarcoating. And in that age, I don't know what was that. Basically, says, "Sir, आप ऐसा क्यों कह रहे हैं? Actually, आप मुझे एक मौका देके देखिए, मैं actually क्यों नहीं कर सकता? मैं भी कर सकता हूँ." And I said, क्या ऐसा क्या है सर? Actually, बाकी लोगों में हमारे पापा बोलते हैं क्या उनके इसमें 2 सींग है क्या? नहीं ना, वो भी तो मतलब बड़ा sort of with a lot of थोड़ा ढींगे हाँक के मैंने बोल दिया. तो he said, ठीक है, कल आ जाना, basically कल आ जाना, so एक टेस्ट दूंगा. So he gave me so SL Loni के problems होते थे, SL Loni trigonometry,
Absolutely. I still remember 1990s, mid-90s, SL Loni was the
so back के जो 300 problem थे वो actually उसमें से शायद even when I was really at my peak, and I was really good at mathematics, but it's been my best subject. I would have solved maybe 100 problems out of 300. So he gives me, remember actually, I have not had any exposure to trigonometry, nothing, right? So he goes there, actually he gives me 3 problems, actually back के 300 problems है, ठीक है? And कागज दे दिया, बैठा दिया, balcony में बैठा दिया. And मुझसे, I remember actually I sat, I think, for maybe 3.5-4 hours, trying to, and 3.5-4 hours mein I actually tried all kinds of, I think there was whatever I did was just absolutely meaningless, I guess. But I actually then at the end of 3.5-4 hours, I go to him with this stack of papers, and I'm sort of feeling a little defeated at that time, because I'm not being able to solve the problem. So, with my head down, I told him, "Sir, शायद आप सही कहते हैं सर कि हमारे जैसे बच्चों का नहीं होगा जेई में, मैं सॉल्व नहीं कर पाया इसको." तो he said, "कल से आ जाना." And then when I got into IIT with that very good rank, my father came to basically thank him. He recalls then actually, because I was very puzzled, why did he I was not able to solve these problems, why did he call me कल से आ जाना क्यों? So then he said कि ये बच्चा मैंने इसको 3 प्रॉब्लम दिए थे, 3.5-4 घंटा बैठा हुआ था. मैंने ऐसे ही बच्चों को शायद 10 मिनट से ज्यादा बैठते हुए कभी देखा नहीं है. 10 मिनट में देख चले जाते हैं. तो मुझे साफ नजर इसमें बहुत जुनून है और ये बच्चा बहुत दूर जाएगा आपका. So and that was at that time I understood actually the importance of that passion. I moved back from US to India in 2009, and I came back recently to the US to handle this responsibility with the IMF in 2022.